Okay, welcome to the installation video for the flaps, servos, and flap hardware for the Parkzone ME109. My name is Randy, by the way, and here we have everything laid out. Now, this wing has already pretty much been done, except for the servos have not been mounted. This is actually the wing that we're going to use to mount the servos up later on, and the cutting and so forth here for the flap itself has already been done. Now I'm going to demonstrate this on another wing that I have for you during this portion of the video. What I did want to do though is I wanted to show you about the servos and the servo layout and how this is going to properly work now. The servos you're going to need are the long lead 3-wire servos. These happen to be SV80s, and they were actually reclaimed from a Parkzone Corsair wing that was completely destroyed actually, so no worries about that. I mean, it's good, recycle the stuff and reuse it. But what I wanted to talk about was the position, first of all, the servos. This is the exact position with which these servos are going to be installed, right like this here as they sit on the table side by side. It's very important to remember that with your DX5E radio, now with the DX6i this may not be the case, and certainly with the DX7, but there is no servo reversing on the 5th channel on a DX5. And you can see that I've got this hooked up to show the actuation of the two servos to provide the motion we need to actuate the flaps. So what you need to do is make sure that your servos are oriented in such a way that you're happy with your switch position, both in the flap neutral position and flap down position, as well as making sure that the horns on the servos, if you'll notice very carefully by watching, the servos only travel about 90 degrees, and what we want to do is we want to split that movement so that we're not, you know, straight up and down. We want to be off center, as much off center one way as it is off center the other way, and that will produce the maximum amount of leverage from the servo to actuate the control surface when we're finally finished. Okay, so let's just talk a little bit about what we're going to need material wise for this whole installation. If we move over here, you can see obviously the screwdriver is not provided in the kit, nor is the Y harness. This material here comes with the aircraft when you buy it. So the linkages to connect to the servo horns, the metal rods that connect to the arms on the servo, and the 4 screws that connect the backing plates through the wing. Now the Y harness is something you're going to need. This was $3.95 at the local hobby shop. This is a universal model designed to be used with JR radios. You'll find that the Futaba ones are a little bit too big. Don't try and use those. The plugs just won't fit with the Spectrum stuff. So use the JR stuff or use Spectrum if you can find it. Now what I want to do right now is I want to move on and show you folks how to make these cuts here, and it's very simple, utilizing nothing more than a standard hobby knife. So I'm just going to move this radio, or this wing, out of the way, and I've got another wing right here with which I'm going to demonstrate this procedure. Now you can see this is the aileron, what would be the aileron, and this is what's going to end up being the flap. So if you look here, you'll see the parting line. If you're very careful with your knife, and just, you don't necessarily have to get all the way through to begin with. What you want to do is keep your cuts nice and straight, using a very gentle sawing motion. Okay, and then we're going to move up into where the hinge tape is. This portion of the flap and the aileron is quite a bit thicker, so it might take you a couple of passes to get through there. Okay, it looks like that side is completely through. This side is completely through. So we'll just take this little piece here. We'll pop that out, and we'll get down in here and just cut very gently across those two and go through again and see if we can't pop that out of there. And come on now, you. And that's about as simple as that is. You do that on both sides, And in this area here, obviously a little bit of touch-up paint. We'll talk about the colors later. A little bit of touch-up paint, but you can see just how easy that was to do with a razor knife. And what we're going to do is we're going to move on in the next portion of this video, and we're going to talk about how to attach the servos, what type of glues to use, or what type of glue I'm going to be using is 5-minute epoxy, and how to run the wires through the holes, and actually how to very cleverly sort of lift this tape. And okay, so we'll look at that in part 2. Thanks so much for having a look at part 1, and we'll see you again for the next portion of this video.